Hello, today I just thought of just doing a video on some sanding techniques. First of all, I'm not a pro, that's a disclaimer for you, but I do a lot of research, reading online on all the different techniques on how to do sandings on model kits and plastic parts. And today we just happened that I'm building a grande scale of a architect, which is this big girl right here. She is this big. Yeah. So the grande scale. And while I'm building, we encounter this part here, which is the shoe that's around the armor portion that's around the leg. And as you can see here, this is a classic Kotobukiya's, I guess, a downside for some of their kids. It's that they have a prominent knot right on the main surface. It's like, why? Why do they do this? Generally we thought they will be along the side here, which is much easier to manage, but they put it right on top. So today I thought of, while I'm working on this part, maybe we can work on a little bit on the sanding of this. So with regards to sanding, what I like to do, or rather maybe I can show you some of my sanding stuff that I use here. I do have some carbon fiber sticks here where you can just stick on a piece of sandpaper and you can use it to sand. So this is for hard surface and flat surface. But what we are working on today is curve. So this is not, I won't advise using this. So we'll be looking at some curve options. We also have some other stuff like this that we can do some sanding. I also bought this along where you can clip on and secure a sandpaper here. And then there's some more examples of stainless steel sticks that I bought to do some sanding as well. And we have all of this cuts out wooden sticks that have a small, you can stick a small sandpaper here. So this allows you to work around small corners. And then you have this as well where you can have this sandpaper. This will also help you to sand around round surface. So we have a lot of all these options that I bought along the years, but today we are going to use sponge because again, one of the options for sanding around curved surface is using a softer materials like sponge here. So what we'll be working on today will be from 400 to 1000, right? And as for sanding, one more tools that I recently bought. It's also a what do you call this? Glass file, right? That glass file right here. And glass files, I find the finishing, it's mirror finish, which sometimes I do not really like it. But I'm still trying to figure out what's the best method to do all these things. Right. As for sanding, usually for what I like to do, will have come with a piece of paper and also a bottle of just water, because I'm working these model kits in my bedroom, so I do not want plastic dust to be everywhere. And wet sanding allows me to control the dust. At the same time, it also makes it makes the finish a little bit better, in my opinion. Yeah, and it's way less messier. So piece of paper, absorbent paper, kitchen towel, and some. I prefer to use this, but sometimes I have a tub of water where I will wash the kits and the sanding pad. Yeah. So today I guess we will just look at how I will go through sanding a parts, especially curved parts right here, parts that have a curved surface. So if I'm doing sanding, usually I will just do a few clippings, not to just remove most of the material and then leave a little bit on, a small nub right here. Same goes with this side. Right, so we're just not going to cut flush. There we go. We do this for the other piece as well. Right, so we leave some materials here for us to work with. Right, so we're done with this. We can put the nipples to one side and then bring out the spray and just wet the parts a little bit while we work on. So the first, we'll be using this God Hands sandpaper right here, 400, which they and this lasts me for quite a while, surprisingly. As in, I don't really use it much, but after perhaps 5 or 6 years, it still works wonder. So sanding, we just start removing some of the materials, and hopefully it just work. And because it's a round surface, so generally I just use this, so I won't worry much about the curvature. And we try to work in one direction. And you can see we are removing quite a lot of the materials, and you can also slowly see where requires more works here. As you can see, around the knob it's not getting sanded. So using a 400 grit, we are mainly most of the materials here. So just wet it a little bit more. And then we can flip around and then we can work on the other side. And with this, we maybe have to change. So we're still trying to keep it to the same orientation of where the sanding is. Then later, when we go to higher grit, we will switch to another direction. So because of this is a big surface, I also want to keep the curves to maintain some of the materials here as well. So it's getting a bit dry. Spray one more time, keep it wet. So of course, my technique is not the best, so please do not, if you are learning how to sand, please don't look at my examples, because after a while you'll start to see, like right now I'm saying right here, that some of these edges is being rounded because the way I sand, I'm actually going around. So if you want to work on this, maybe you can pull in instead around the corner instead of going out this way, because when you go out this way, we are pressing the sandpaper around the edge. So if you want to maintain the edge, you pull in. Yeah, it's getting a bit dry. Just hit it with a little bit of spray. So if you want to maintain the edge, just pull in. So again, when you are closer to the edge, try not to apply too much pressure. That too can also cause your edge to round. So let us just check. Just wipe the surface around and then we see where we are. So as you can see from the reflective that we are not quite at it yet. So let me just continue this and then we'll come back later. Okay, we are back. So I realized that the nub was getting is quite difficult to get rid of it. So I pull out a rougher grid, which is a 240, and this is the result. As you can see here, we still maintain the same line here, and you can see the scratches and everything. So once we've done that, then we're going to kit it with the lower sand grid. So while you're working with bigger lesser grid, just try not to apply too much pressure, because if you were to press hard and goes along it, you're going to create a lot of deep groove around here. So if you're working on sandpaper, in a way I learned it the hard way, is that try not to press it too hard. You just lightly go over it. All right, it's a very light motion. You don't need to, you know, force it down. You're not removing materials. Initially, perhaps when you want to remove materials, perhaps yeah, you can press it in. You can use more force. But otherwise, when you're sanding, you just use a very light force. So we are done with we are done with the 240. As you can see here, the surface are all being all reached by the sandpaper or the sanding pad. So that means that you are sanding all the surface here. The surface will be uniform. So now we are going to go over 400 and then we are going to be doing it horizontally. So I'm going to see you in a while. Hello, we are almost done with 400 and now you can see the results of the sanding. Alright, so as you can see right here, the result is from the 240 versus the 400. We can still see some scratches here. I'm not sure how much it will show on the camera here. You can see some scratches right here. So from what I know from experience is that before you move out to the next grid, you try to remove all these scratches, because it's going to be very difficult to fix in the future. So as you move out from the next grid to the next grid, so example before we move from 240, perhaps maybe I can even include the 320 here, but we just straight out go to the 400. So while working on 400 grid, we want to remove all these scratches from the previous one before we move on to the higher grid. So yeah, so perhaps we will continue to see what our results here is, but it's a little bit difficult for me because it's on the edge right here, so I don't want to, you know, curve the surface too much, and it's a little bit difficult to work with on that side. So yeah, so that's a challenge I'm facing if you want the step, the 400 step. And as for the other piece, I guess I can show you. There's not much scratches here, so we did a good job on this. Yeah, there's still some perhaps over here. Yeah, so when doing sanding, it's all about patience, and that's why sometimes sanding to a lot of people is the hardest part or the most annoying part, because it takes a lot of work. It's very tedious, and you really have to be very meticulous and precise of what you want. So right here we can see that this side we are done. We only left a little bit here. You can see from the vertical lines right here. So that is from the previous sanding. So as we work between grids, we want to, go perpendicular. So for the 240 grid, we went vertical lines. So for the 400 grid, it goes horizontally. And then as you can see now, we fix it. So now we can move on to the 600. So this is a fresh piece, and I guess while we are working on the 600, I can also share with you a story on how I got this. So you can see from most of my sand grid I bought from it's a Godhand brand which lasts me for many years, and this is new. This is from Steady, and how I get this, it's also a very interesting story. Um, so I was at a so we are going vertically. So we was at a in a way a local Gundam event, and they have a booth that is selling, mainly showcasing their products. So I walk up to the shop and it was like, hey, are those sanding blocks? And then it's like, yeah, it is. And I was like looking at it, and they just asked me, do you want some, do you want it? I was like, want it as in my intention was saying like, oh, I want it. Yeah, I want to buy it. So I said, yeah, I want it, and they just gave me a box of this for free. Yeah, just take it, they say. So I got a free box of a sanding pads, and basically to be honest, this is, I think, the first time using it. The grit definitely feels sharper, as it is very rough as compared to, like, even this, when I feel it, it's rougher than the 400, than the 220 and the 400. So hopefully we are working on the same grit. It's getting a bit dry. I guess we can make a comparison between the 600 grid, the result from the 600 grid versus the 400. So just make sure. And because this is curved, I can technically use my finger to curve with the whole thing and just rock it. But the downside of doing this, the good side, as in the pro of doing this is you cover the entire surface. But the downside is you may round it even more. Okay, so let us just clean up here, and we see the results. Okay, so this is 600. As you can see, there is some groove and lines here as versus to a 400. So how did it go? It feels rougher, right? For whatever reasons, it feels rougher. But again, we just go through, make sure that we sanded the entire surface. Or perhaps you can just take a look at this and say, oh, all the grooves are vertical. I don't see any horizontal groove, and then we can continue. And then for this big surface, I just work a little bit on it. Yeah, just give it a rough matted surface. Right, so that is the 600, and we go to the other one. Hopefully the whole process we can see the durations. We are at 20 minutes already. Yikes. Yeah, so you can see sending takes a while. But if Kotobukiyas can improve the way they do their knobs, then we don't really have to send. It's really, as in, it's a persisting problems that I have, or a criticism I have with Kotobukiyas. It's sometimes their knob placement is just really really inconvenient. Like they could do better. They can put on this side here where it's not that obvious, but they chose to put it right on the surface right here. It's ridiculous. So on the main surface at all. So sometimes I really do not get their engineers or their designers on why they have to do that. Usually they do it on some of the larger pieces. So perhaps one can reason saying that it is for the there's some big grooves right here. Is for the how the flow, a good flow. Okay, that is a legit thing to say, but still it's irritating. Right, so that is 600. It's a very quick step, and then we can move on to 800 right here. Same thing, wet it, and 600 we went vertical, so 800 we go horizontal. It's not wet enough. So we should be fairly quickly going for this. So as down here you see, this is a 1000 pad. I do have higher grids as well. So we are looking. We have 1200, and from 1200 we jump straight to 2000, and 2000, after 2000 I have a 4000 grid. So those are for close to mirror buff. Actually, after 4000 there I do have a buffing pad. It's not a sanding pad, it's a buffing pad. And those does make it very shiny, but not as shiny as working with glass foul. For whatever reason, glass foul does give a very shiny finish. So now we are looking at 800. We are pretty much almost done. I'm quite, as you can see, the knobs here is just left with a black dot. And just checking the lines here, whether is there any scratch mark. Maybe I can just sand this bit here to make it a little bit more consistent. Same goes with the bottom. Just make it a little bit more consistent with the remain color, so it all blends in together. Right, but that is not the main focus. The main focus is the surface. So sand, we are wet sanding. So just do this, and then with 800, with the higher grids, you can be a little bit more, I guess, less. I don't know how to say it. So I can just go through it in a less tedious way. Alright. because the unremoving a lot of materials, so you can work with it. So I'm just going through some of this just to act up the surface, so everything blends in together well. Okay, and then we just do a white, and then we see how we do. So there we go. And looking at this, it works really well. This requires a little bit more work. As you can see here, there's still some vertical lines, but overall I guess it's good. So just sand here a little bit at the corner. Make sure our surface it's all consistent. Okay, so we are done with 800. See, the remaining is fast. This is only the starting part when you're sanding. With the higher grades, with the lower grade or the rougher grade, the 240, 400, where you need to pay a little bit more attention. And then after that, it's the light work. Alright, so now we move on to the 1000. So we are going vertically, and it should suffice 1000 grade. We should suffice with the. We are not looking for mirror finish. So just run it through, and then this is vertical. Okay, this should do it. 1000. Very nice. Right, thus the finish is more than enough. Right, the other one. Yeah, vertical, yes. Just make sure you cover the whole surface. Okay. Double check. Yeah, looks good. Though there is this corner right here, just work it a little bit more, and we should be done. Right? So there's more dust right here. Usually I take an off toothbrush, right, and then just brush it. To make sure the part is clean. Okay, there you go. So this is the sanding process. So of course, yeah, if you want, you can go even higher grade, but to me, this is more than enough. So after this, I will just go through the water, running water, and also wash all this pad as well, and I will clean up and show you the results of this. Alright, see you in a bit. Okay, we are back. So after some cleaning and drying, this is the final result of what we are seeing here. So usually if we were to sand, we want to work from a lower grade to a higher grade, and then make sure when we are sanding it goes perpendicular. So after you work down with one grade vertically, then as you move to the next grade, you go horizontally. So as you alternate, you can clear out some of this. And then of course the end results here. You can see the results. And then generally I don't really sand. Usually I just use the X-Acto knife and just carve out the knife. So this is what we see here, where I use the knife instead, and that's the results. So definitely, if you were to work with sanding, it's gonna take a while, but in a way, the result is way better. So let us bring it out. So this part will go through here. Right? Is it upward side or downside? Right? So this is where we are. So it's a big shy girl, a very big part, and yep. Thank you for joining, and hopefully you learn something from amateur like me. And yeah, so this is how I do sanding, wet sanding to be more specific. So thank you, and if you like the content, do leave a like, comment on what else you want to see, and yeah, and press even subscribe as well. Thank you.